Hi there, and welcome to this edition of the DisruptED interviews. We're doing something a little bit different this time. This is the Ashes Head Student Edition. I'm aware that over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to a lot of educators and principals, school leaders, but I think it's really important that we also capture some student voice and capture how they've been feeling in this context. So welcome, one and all. I'm going to get you to go around and I'll call your name and you guys can just introduce yourself and say just a little bit about yourself. So Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben and yeah, I'm year 13.
Awesome. Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm also, well, we are all naturally year 13 being the head students. But yeah.
And Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. Yeah, I am year 13. My favourite school subjects are the sciences and history.
Awesome. And Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I like writing essays.
Awesome. You'll be warming the cockles of a whole lot of hearts saying that. And we've got Shaq.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Shaq. I like to play rugby. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Elliot.
Hey, I'm Elliot. So I'm really into doing UN Youth and debating outside of school, but I love my schoolwork as well.
And Elliot's just been telling me about how the debating has continued on through lockdown, and I'm really keen to hear more about that. And last but not least, we've got Blake here as well. You look like a man of mystery,
Hey,
Blake.
I'm Blake. I really enjoy rugby outside of school, and during school time, I like my sciences and maths.
Awesome, thank you. So one of the things that we've been talking a lot about in these DisruptED interviews is how schools prepared for going into lockdown. Do a few of you want to just tell me about your experience those first few days of what it was like going into lockdown, and really interested to find out what you think worked and maybe even a little bit about what you think maybe didn't work and what presents the challenges in this space. Anyone's welcome to jump in.
Okay, well, I'll start. Basically, leading up to the lockdown, we were like set up on Google Meet so that we can do still recordings, and teachers were starting to set up Google Classrooms. But I know the lockdown happened a lot earlier than anyone kind of expected it to. So not everything was 100% ready. But then obviously we've had the holidays, so things will be good now, but...
How about anyone else? Anyone else's insights into those first few days? What did they like about how learning was delivered online, and what did they find challenging? Maybe explain what learning looked like for you online in the first place. Elliot, do you want to tell me about, or Ben?
So for me, I found it.
Go, Blake.
Also, I found it quite overwhelming going into it straight away since we hadn't done much in school. But then I quite enjoyed when the teacher would put up the work on Google Classroom along with Education Perfect and do the Q&As, meets, which was really helpful.
How about you, Elliot? How did you find those first few days?
Yeah, I actually think of all the times that it could have happened, we were pretty lucky that lockdown happened when it did, because we were sort of towards the end of the term anyway, which meant most of us were wrapping up internals, which is mostly independent-based work. So I think we were in a good position to work from home. One aspect that I found really beneficial was actually the tutorial class, which is like our form class. That sort of meeting, we had Google Meets every Tuesday and Thursday, which was really nice just to keep that connection. But yeah, Google Classroom was a great resource, and just me working independently on my internals using Google Drive, that seemed to work quite well.
And how about you, Shaq?
Yeah,
sorry, Emily, you go.
I just wanted to add quickly, Google Meets has been so good. Like having that chance to have one-on-one, group time with your teacher is really great, because it feels like you're still in a classroom even though you're at home. But yeah, it was a bit unsettling because it was actually my chemistry class's big lab practical day, the day we went into lockdown. And so while the transition was relatively smooth, there were some things that just couldn't occur. Google Meets is fantastic.
And how about you, Shaq? How have you found it? What have you found good? What have you found frustrating?
Yeah, going off what Emily said, it was good. Like the Google Meets were good because our teachers were still giving us like the plans and stuff for what we needed to do, and yeah, we got to talk to our classmates and stuff, and we all got to like help each other. So it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ben, have you got anything to add? What have you found so far?
I would basically agree with what everyone said. I think, as Elliot said, we were at quite a good time that we weren't going through much new learning. We weren't having to learn new content, which is probably part of the harder part of learning on your own from a distance. So we were quite lucky in that sense. I think I also agree that it was really awesome being able to do lots of Google Meets, because it meant that we kind of kept that normal rhythm in place, which was quite comforting in the uncertain times for me personally. And yeah, having the teachers support emotionally, not just for your subject, they also cared about your well-being and all, which was really important for me. And yeah, the digital, I think, through just the internet, and we were really well set up to stay connected, which is really good.
Yeah. And what about you, Olivia? What was your experience like?
Well, I think we can all agree that it happened like relatively fast.
Yeah.
Like I remember sitting in English that morning and my teacher was like, I reckon we're not going to be back here tomorrow. And that happened. So I think for me personally, it did take me a couple of days to, you know, settle down. I tried to spend heaps of time with my family, you know, being there for the people in my household. So I didn't actually do too much work. But I think kind of linking to what Elliot and Ben were saying there, I found the tutorials really good. I jumped on a Google Meet with my tutorial teacher, and she was really good at engaging us in conversation, not only about how we can keep on top of our work, but also like see how we are doing on a personal level, which I found really good. So yeah, I can't wait to get back into it.
So hopefully tomorrow is the beginning of term, officially the beginning of term 2 for most state schools. If I'm just going to go around to each of you now, I'm really keen to just hear some advice that you've got for your teachers and teachers around New Zealand who are going to be looking after their learners for the next week or so, at the very least online, and possibly in a mixed space in the weeks going forward. So I'll start with you, Elliot, because I know you have to get away for another meeting soon. What are some things that you think we could do differently, better? What's important for you in terms of you and your learning moving forward?
Yeah, I guess for me, I think a big thing is just like, you know, being patient. This is obviously quite an unprecedented time. So, and everyone sort of deals with it differently. You know, some people probably won't even bat an eyelid, but then other people, it will affect them in like much more severe ways in terms of maybe their mental health. So just like having patience with every learner, but also, you know, still maintaining like that sort of like a friendly push for students to achieve highly. Like, while we do want like, you know, some sort of like patience and understanding, it would be really nice, you know, for you to continue motivating us to achieve highly even when we're learning at home. So just finding that balance, and I think will be sweet.
Oh, being warm and demanding. We often talk about being warm demanders at Albany Senior High School, and
yeah,
I think you've captured that really nicely there. What about for you, Shaq? Moving forward, what do you think teachers need to think about in terms of how they support you and learning in this sort of weird, uncertain space?
I think for teachers, it's more checking up on our students. Like, they have specific classes at times, and some of our students do get lost, especially during this time, because we have no idea what's going on unless we always go on our phones and stuff in our devices. So just checking up on our students and making sure that they're okay, because it is a tough time right now, and yeah, we need to get through it together. So just some support would be nice. Yeah,
that support and care is going to be really important and really powerful, isn't it? What about for you, Emily? What are you thinking about in terms of the weeks and what will work?
So my biggest thing would be stay connected. Try and get video calls going, because I know for me personally, like having a video call with a teacher is so much better for me than just having like an email or something. Sure, you might get the same message across, but it's just so much more, you feel so much more connected and almost supported if you can see your teacher and feel connected. So just try and stay connected in a physical way, because yeah, if we're working at home and all we're getting is emails of what to do, it's sort of just, there's no motivation, and you sort of just feel like no one's there for you to help. Whereas if you actually see your teacher, it feels way better.
Yeah, awesome. And what about you, Ben? What's some of your tips for teachers as they plan for the next few weeks?
I think, yeah, what everyone said before, I think being patient with the learners and being there when we need them. I think, as Emily said with emails, I find Google Meets is so great because you can get feedback and you can ask them questions instead of having to email and wait for a response. And that is a lot more efficient, and again, it feels a lot more connected. I also think, I personally find that everyone's dealing with it differently, and the last thing that we really need at this point is lots of intense due dates. And yeah, just kind of be a bit more understanding. Still keep the pressure up, as Elliot said, but just maybe make it a little bit more flexible for the learners.
Yeah, awesome advice. So make sure people are being responsive to people's specific context, because some of you, I mean, all of our students will be different, particularly beyond our head student realm in terms of the pressures that are on them at home, the responsibilities they have, how well they're dealing with the situation, how well their families are dealing with the situation. So that, warmth, demanding, flexibility, I imagine those are all going to be really important. What about you, Chelsea? What are you thinking about? What's your advice for teachers as they plan their way forward?
As long as teachers are posting all of the information up online, whatever your school uses, as long as you're keeping all the information that students need up there and being patient with them, most students will get it done. So as long as the information's there, you're patient, and you do follow up with your students, you should be set.
Yeah. So patience, following up, also really good advice. What are you thinking about, Blake? What's your advice for teachers as we move forward into term 2?
I think just having lots of different forms of the same information. So for us, when we use Google Classroom and Education Perfect, I think using both of those in conjunction is really well and helps deepen my learning a lot. So if we use multiple different resources to engage the same audience just for different people.
Awesome. That's really good. And that lines up with, in terms of teacher speak, we talk about universal design for learning and having multiple modes and means for students to engage with the same learning. So you don't just rely on one exercise and one strand. What were you going to add, Emily?
I just wanted to say quickly, because we've all been saying things we'd like teachers to do, I just wanted to quickly say thank you to all the teachers, because I know even in the last 3 days of school, there was already so much support that we were being given. And I think what we forget as students, as teachers, are also going through lockdown. It's also a tough time for teachers as well. And so the fact that we're still getting fantastic support level, it really does mean a lot to us as students.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah.
You warm the cockles of my heart. No, that's absolutely awesome. So the next gritty thing that will be on top for you guys and a lot of our learners is NCEA. I'm just keen to go around the group and hear your perceptions of what are you worrying about, and what do you think students are worried about in terms of NCEA, and what could we do at a school level, but also what could the ministry and universities do to make NCEA less of a big deal in the current context that we're sitting in? So I'm going to start with Elliot in case I lose him.
Yep, no problem. So would you mind just repeating the question? Sorry.
So thinking about NCEA, what could, what is on top for you with NCEA? What could schools do to help alleviate some of the feelings of pressure around it? But also, if you could talk to the Minister of Education tomorrow and the universities tomorrow, what would you be telling them to consider and think about in terms of NCEA and making it, something that students can achieve or feel like they're working towards this year?
That's really interesting, actually. I mean, this is the sort of question I'd like to maybe have a bit more time to think about to give a really well thought out answer. But I suppose one just key piece of basic sort of line of thinking that I have is, sort of as a ministry, sort of maybe be prepared to be flexible in the way that we approach NCEA. I mean, obviously this is not really something that we have a lot of experience with, as an entire nation. So, if we do need to suddenly come up with changes, maybe externals need to be radically different. I think just sort of being open and ready to, institute those sort of changes. Beyond that, I can't really think of anything else at the moment, but it's definitely something I'll have to think about.
Do you think all levels should be focusing on NCEA, or do you think that some levels could afford to be take a bit more time if they know they're coming back to school next year, maybe? I realise you guys are in level 3, so you're in a different boat.
Yeah, look, I do think that, and I understand that, like, quite a common view is that level 1 is less important. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. I still think that level 1 is important. But yeah, I do find it unusual how the level 1 syllabus or curriculum has more credits. So perhaps maybe, one option is bringing it down to 60 for this year, because, maybe our year 11 students are struggling with a lot of things right now, as we all are. So that's one possibility, I suppose.
Awesome. What about you, Emily? I'm sure this is the sort of thing you think about.
This is, of course, something I thought about, yeah. So what I was thinking is we've got to get our 60 credits. That's the way it is. So a lot of people talk about reducing the credits, but something I would suggest is find alternate ways of doing the credits. So at Albany Senior, we do impact projects. Now, we don't actually often get credits for these, but even though the learning is still just as valuable as what other learning we get in other classes, in my opinion. And so as part of this impact projects, because obviously a lot of them can't be done, we're doing something called the Lockdown Challenge. And that's like doing stuff in your community around lockdown. And I think it would be really cool if something like getting credits for something like that, but using real world skills that are actually relevant in real life during the lockdown. So you're not reducing the number of credits you're getting. You've simply got an opportunity to get them in our different paced world, because there's so many opportunities and different challenges available now compared to normal, that it would be great if solving some of that would potentially give people the credits when perhaps stuff like science labs can't at the moment.
Well, people are going to start thinking that I've given you guys the answers I wanted to say. So can you please up front explain to people that I did not give you the answers?
Yeah.
Ben,
we didn't say any of, tell us to say any of this. This is just what I honestly believe.
Ben, what have you been thinking about? What are some of your thoughts around NCEA?
Well, I think that NCEA has quite a big part to play in this lockdown for students. I think that one of the most important things is clarity, which we haven't gotten a lot of at this point. I think, again, everyone's it's unprecedented time, so no one has done this before, so I get that. But I also think that from a student's point of view, it'd be great to hear from the top, from NCEA, what the rest of the year will look like, whatever that is. Because we've all got lots of questions about how will exams look, how many credits will we need, blah, blah, blah. I think that'd be really great once they've kind of figured that out, to make that very clear. I also think that, about level 1 NCEA, I think that, like, for level 1, it's my understanding is that it's about the learning that you get there, and it's about learning the structure of NCEA. But yeah, since it's maybe not your final year of learning, I would definitely recommend reducing the workload, or maybe focus on the learning itself, but not the credits as such. Just so that they are no less disadvantaged to go to level 2, but that they don't have that big 80 credits that they have to get.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my kind of suggestion.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. What about you, Chelsea? What have you been thinking about?
Okay, so I've been thinking basically for schools like ours, where everyone has devices and access to the internet, it's going to be quite easy for us to find like alternate internals that we can do instead of the practical ones we were going to do at school, and still get our credits. However, I know we're a Decile 10 school, and lots of schools in Auckland aren't. And so you just need to, with NCEA, judge for the fact that, not all schools are going to have access to the same technology we have. They're not going to be able to do the same standard of learning online. It's going to be a lot weaker and a lot less reliable. And so
the digital divide is a very real thing, because it's not necessarily just about the kids suddenly getting devices in their hands. It's about how schools have been used to working, and therefore what their experience is in delivering this style of learning. So yeah, that divide is a very real thing. Yeah, exactly.
So unis and NCEA just need to not look at like a school like ours, for example, and take that as the standard. They need to take a school that's like the complete opposite of ours, not set up for online learning, see what they're actually capable of achieving, and then work up from that.
I actually think I might ask the ministry to step down and just get you guys to run the place, because quite frankly, the clarity of your thinking is just blowing me away. What about you, Shark? How are you feeling about NCEA, and what's your thoughts about how we could manage it this year to make it more realistic and more inclusive?
For our school, I think it's quite easy, like, because we can work around things quite quickly and we can adapt. But yeah, going off what Chelsea said, like, for other schools, it might not be as easy. So I think if they set up something for, like, I wouldn't say for one school, but for something that everyone can get used to, they can set up a system for that, and then I think it would be much appreciated by everyone.
Yeah. So it's making sure it's actually meeting the needs of everyone, and not just, meeting the needs of pockets of potential privilege that sometimes we're not even aware that we live in. What about you? What about you, Blake? What are you thinking in terms of NCEA? Like, what's important to you? Is getting all the credits important, or is it about the learning? Is it about knowing that you've got your pathway sorted?
Yeah, so for me, I know that at the moment I'm chasing the credits because of the future that I want to go into with university, but I feel that shouldn't be my goal. I feel like we should really be focusing more on the learning and more on creating a deeper understanding of what we've learned, instead of just learning it and then forgetting it for the next internal.
Yeah.
So I think if NCEA requirements and the university entrance requirements changed this year, especially just to account for what has happened, it would be very beneficial for more students.
Yeah, and what in terms of timing, like one of the things I really think is sometimes I think at a national level they don't understand how early in the year that you're worried about this. My feeling is the sooner students and families understand what we're looking at, the better. Are you guys feeling that? Like, what's your feeling about when you might find that information? Chelsea, what's your thoughts?
Okay, so basically with this, if we're working towards our goal of like 80 credits to get our ranks, or if we want to go to Auckland, and then we're working towards that, and then they're like, oh, well, actually we're changing it to do this. We've been working towards one thing, and we might not have like enough towards what they've changed it to. Yeah. So we need to know like sooner rather than later what we're actually working towards.
Yeah, so that helps. Olivia, what were you thinking?
In terms of kind of the last question, because I didn't get to kind of, I think.
Oh, sorry, didn't I hit you? Sorry, Olivia, go for that last question.
No, that's okay. I was wanting to kind of just say is obviously, no one's been through this, and it's definitely a different time. And I think that we need to be reminded that people learn differently online than they do in a school environment. Like, I know for me, I don't get through just as much work as I do like at home than I do at school, because there's so many more distractions. But I think the thing that I'd like to see is just kind of reassurance from the school, from the government, because I know for us year 13s anyways, we are looking at tertiary study for next year, and thinking about scholarships and thinking about rank scores and all this stuff. And I just think, maybe leniency, maybe that's the answer, but I just think reassurance to know that it will be like okay, is what I think.
Awesome. And yes, Emily, what were you going to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add on to what Chelsea said about telling us sooner rather than later. Everybody's very nervous right now about what's going to happen. There's sort of this feeling of what's going to change. And one thing I wanted to say is we could be so focused on what's going to change, like what are we going to do to change, and changing everything, that we actually forget that some people will still be able to achieve their NCEA level 3 on the current standards. Some people still will be able to get the university entrance. And so I think one thing making sure is that we don't wrap up everything. We just provide alternate pathways, because some people won't want to do something different when they can already get what's currently there.
So when we're considering being inclusive, it's sort of about being inclusive at all ends of the spectrum in terms of understanding the complexities, but also understanding that there's some who can hit the targets that are set at the moment and should still have the opportunity in some way, shape or form to have that recognised maybe?
Yeah, don't necessarily just think of the people who are going to struggle to achieve it, or just think of the people who are going to achieve it easily. Think of everybody. Like, everybody's so different, and so yeah, making sure that some paths stay the same for the people who can still get those paths, and some paths change for people who can't get those paths, who would have got the other paths in a normal situation.
Yeah.
But this is not a normal situation. Don't forget about everyone.
Yeah.
I guess.
No, that's really good. Ben, what were you going to add?
I just want to add to what you said earlier, Claire, about kind of would like to know as soon as possible, which I definitely think is very important and very true, because a lot of students like myself have been looking at university, looking about what we need to do to get there, scholarships, rank score, and having planning this already earlier in the year. And you know, this uncertainty is, yeah, it's quite stressful for lots of people who have been planning things for a while. And I think that's, yeah, we just need a bit of clarity there. One more thing as well. I don't know if this would work, but it's just an idea that popped in my head about using a student's, mainly year 13's year 12 results. Not fully, but I think that could be used a little bit. I know
As a safety net, maybe as a secondary
I
way
just
of evidencing learning. Yeah.
That could be just another secondary, as you said, another way of measuring our learning in the past.
Awesome. What were you going to add, Olivia?
I was just going to say, like, I agree with what you're saying, Ben, and about, you know, like, we want answers, like, and it would be great to know, like, as soon as possible. Obviously, you know, term 2 starts again tomorrow, and necessarily I'm not too sure what it looks like for me studying at home and stuff. But I also think, you know, no one really knows what the future looks like for education in, you know, an online environment. So I don't know. I just think it's quite like too standard, because, you know, I want to know, but
yeah, you don't want people to be rushing and guessing.
You don't know.
Yeah, and I think
I think
it's a real challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Ben, what were you going to say?
One more thing, sorry. Kind of on what Olivia was saying is that I think with the uncertainty, it kind of is demotivating, because it kind of, we kind of don't know what's the point in doing this work from a distance if we don't really know how it's going to help us in our future, which we previously knew because of the way that the system works. But the way that, you know, we're currently working from home, I think it's going to be struggling. It'll be hard to stay motivated if we don't know if this is going to count, if this will still matter, and yeah, kind of it might demotivate students.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna round us up here. So you've got one thing that you can say now to the Minister of Education and to you know, our educators. So let's pretend Mr. Chris Hipkins was watching this video, and you have this once in a lifetime opportunity to tell him directly one thing that needs to be considered as we move ourselves forward. Blake, have you got an inspirational message for the Minister?
Not really inspirational, but what I'd like to see changed is really just, the requirements for university, or having multiple different options for requirements to get into. So we could still keep the standard like rank score for Auckland, but then you could also have a different variation of the rank score, which uses, say, 60 credits instead of 80.
Yeah. So having multiple pathways to success. What about you, Emily? What's your message for the Minister?
Yeah, my message would be not everything has to change. We're at this point, we know that some stuff needs to change, but keep what's there, just maybe add on to that.
So giving options and some maybe exploring the idea of multiple pathways rather than chopping everything off at the knees. And
don't make one new pathway, make one extra pathway.
Okay, awesome. What about you, Shaq? What would you say to the Minister if you got to chat to him tomorrow?
Going off the pathway thing, I'm pretty sure most year 13s don't even know what they want to do in the future. So I think having like extra classes and stuff there available, or extra courses, would be helpful for the students, like especially during this time, because there's a lot of uncertainty going on. and yeah, it'd be really helpful.
What about you, Olivia? What do you say to the Minister? And it doesn't have to be about NCEA, it can be anything about this lockdown period.
Yeah, like I don't think I have like a big opinion on this yet. I just think I know that a lot of parents are probably feeling anxious about their child's learning, and I know a lot of students themselves are probably, you know, worried about how they're going to achieve certain levels or goals or whatever. So I just think that you know, I think we just need reassurance from the government that this will all be all right in terms of our education, and that our health is the most important thing during this time, and that you know, as much as education is important, that we don't need to worry about it in a big way.
Nice. I like it. And Chelsea, what are you thinking?
Basically, just when you're like making the decision about what's going to happen, what your plans are, just remember that everyone's in a different boat with their access to education and the quality of their online learning. So just take that into consideration.
Awesome. And Ben?
I think that one of the things I'd say to the Minister of Education is that even though these are really hard times and it's hard to account for such a variation of students with different circumstances, it is so important to do something soon and to start making choices and being really clear about what those choices are to students so that we're all on the same page. And yeah, I think that we can use this lockdown to our advantage. We can become more resilient learners, and we can grow from this in a way that we wouldn't normally from school. We can learn stuff from this lockdown that we can't be taught in school in a weird kind of way, which I think is another thing to kind of have in mind.
Awesome. Thank you, people. I'm going to hit the stop recording button. But before I do that, I just want to say to the people watching this today, thank you for joining us for the special edition of the DisruptED interviews, the Ashes Student Voice edition. And just remember, you can go to YouTube and you can find DisruptED TV and subscribe if you'd like an interview in your inbox every morning. Until then, thank you for joining us. And thank you once again to the absolutely fabulous head students of Albany